1, 2, 3, 4. If you can do all your stuff, what can figure it out? That's how it chooses you.
Hey, I just wanted to follow up on our episode last week.
Yeah.
It sort of struck me after the fact. Our episodes are released on Wednesdays, but we record several days before. So on last week's episode, Teresa and I were complaining about the weather here in Colorado.
Yeah.
And then in between the time we recorded and the time the episode was released, as everybody knows, Texas is in crisis mode.
Yeah.
As hundreds of thousands of people have been left without power.
Yeah, in the freezing cold. Yeah, Texas is suffering.
I am aware that we probably sound like assholes.
We definitely did.
Yeah, especially as a Texan, I found that a little upsetting. I just wanted to give people a few resources for where to donate if they're interested to my people, my Texans. You can donate to Mutual Aid Houston, DFW Mutual Aid, Para Mi Gente. You can donate to the North Texas Food Bank. You can donate to the Pandemic Mobile Pantry, the Funky Town Fridge. If you'd like to donate to help the incarcerated, there's the Texas Jail Project, and there's Texas Inmate Families Association. If you'd like to help animals, there's Panhandle Pet Savers and Pets Needing Parents Rescue in West Texas. So please, let's show Texas some love. Let's help some people out that need our help.
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you for that. Yes, we were definitely jerks. And we hope that I'll be making a donation to some animal charity because Ted Cruz left his dog outside in the freezing cold when he went to Cancun. And if you need to know what Republicans are, that's what Republicans are.
And welcome to the podcast, It Chooses You. I'm Claire Patton, here with my co-host, Teresa Sparks. If you haven't, please subscribe and review our podcast. It helps us find other listeners just like you who are interested in our particular brand of snarky storytelling. And now, on with the show. So, Teresa, I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is disasters. Today, on It Chooses You, we're talking about pop culture fiascos, disasters, and hoaxes. Instances that create fan grievance and disappointment.
Okay. Fan grievances. Is this a prelude to next season's Festivus party?
That's right.
We're just preparing the airing of grievances, yes.
This is the pop culture airing of grievances. I'm talking about events whose hype doesn't live up to the experience in some way, right?
Okay.
In this episode, I've identified two main sources of fiasco and fan grievance. And we'll get to the second one in a little bit, but we're going to start with pop culture disasters or disappointment. This is the blunder, the failure of a pop culture event to live up to the expectation.
Okay.
And there are two factors at play in this kind of fiasco. There's the fans and then the producers or artists. Usually the failure occurs because the promises made by often marketing people don't live up to the product. And sometimes it happens because the fan expectation is too high.
Sure. Miscommunication requires two parties.
In either case, the artist's powers can't match the promises or expectations that are in place, right?
Okay.
We see this a lot in television shows. The first that came to mind for me was the Game of Thrones series finale.
Oh, Lord have mercy. It hurts so bad.
The other one I thought of was kind of the culmination of Lost was disappointing.
Uh-huh.
And I also just want to say here, there's a scale of grievance, right? None of this, with the exception of one, ruined my life. Like, you know what I mean? But people react in varied ways to disappointment.
The two things you just talked about are story-based, and we are so invested in our stories, right? If you have set me up to understand characters and then you have them do stuff that is completely out of left field for no reason, I'm going to have problems with you.
Yep, exactly. Do you have any TV disappointments other than those two that you can think of?
Battlestar Galactica.
Good one. I had forgotten that one.
Yeah, the ending of that series is basically, and then they woke up. It made me so mad.
Yeah, that's a surefire way to disappoint your fans, is to make the entire story you've told irrelevant.
Yeah.
At the end. To say, JK, at the end of a series that people have been following for years is a slap in the fucking face.
It really is, and especially when it's a very dark and challenging and you're working through a lot of emotions and thoughts and feelings about loyalty and what it means to hold true to a set of ideals. Yeah, Battlestar Galactica really hurt me.
Yeah. You know, it does seem like there's a relationship between the expectation and the potential for the disappointment. The closer you fly to the sun, the larger the fall. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I mean, how interesting that we're going to Icarus, right? And in this pop culture, in these, these moments that are disappointing, I want to know where Daedalus is. Like, is there anyone saying, hey, maybe don't pin all your hopes on the ending of Battlestar Galactica?
Right.
Maybe it's just a story and you need to distance yourself from it for your own sake, because I can see that your wings are starting to melt.
Let's agree here and now to be each other's Daedaluses.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be that for you.
Then, of course, you see it in movies, right? Like Star Wars Phantom Menace.
Sure.
The buildup and hype was so huge, and then you get Jar Jar Binks, And then the other one that's pretty common, I didn't find it personally that disappointing, was Avatar.
Oh, I think I've ever seen Avatar, so.
What are some of the other pop culture disappointments you've suffered in your life there, Teresa?
Oh, well, I was thinking about products I've purchased. So I realize there's a common thread, but I'll tell you a few of them first. So,
Sure.
Do you remember the Pogo Ball? Did you ever have a Pogo Ball?
Oh, you stand on it, you squeeze it with your feet. Yes.
It looks like Saturn. You squeeze it with your feet, and you're supposed to be able to bounce on it.
I did have one.
So I don't know if the genuine article was disappointing to those who purchased it, but I'm pretty sure my grandma found this at like a flea market in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, let's just say, those kids in the commercial were having a lot more fun on it than I ever managed to have. Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
I remember that being disappointing.
The other thing is I bought a hair crimping iron in my late middle school years, convinced that that one purchase would make me cool. And you know what? It didn't.
So all you wanted in life was to come bouncing down the street on your Pogo Ball, crimped hair floating in the breeze, and you knew you were going to be cool, and it just didn't happen.
That's right. I also had teal mascara on this list.
Oh, yeah.
And that also did not make me cool. Well, so the common thread is, of course, I want a product to change my life utterly and forever with one purchase, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's a realistic expectation.
Yeah, that's right. That's all I want from these corporations. Just change my life for the better utterly.
And we're going to be talking a lot about promises / expectation versus reality. So to be fair to little you, there were promises made in the commercials for these products.
That's right. The commercial for that teal mascara, boy, I was like, I'm gonna, like, the thing is, like, growing up in West Virginia, all of the commercials are about a socioeconomic class that we're just not in. Like, the things that they're going to do with the teal mascara on are not things that are available to me. Right. But I thought maybe if I had teal mascara, suddenly there would be this fun thing I could go do. Backwards thinking for sure.
Well, I mean, let's face it, the teal mascara makes things happen.
It does. If you're going to walk into a bowling alley without teal mascara on, then you're going to miss the opportunities that bowling alley presents.
That's right. I mean, you put that teal mascara on and you go to the bowling alley, fucking Mario Lopez walks in the door.
That's exactly right. I'll be discovered at a bowling alley in Parkersburg, West Virginia, having no desire to act or be in front of people ever.
And someone will just hand you a free pair of Z Cavaricis.
Oh my God. Yes.
Any other products?
As I was thinking about this, I thought, I remember I saw the first eyeshadow, like little foreshadow collection thing I ever bought, was purple, because mid-80s. And I was thinking about that, and I was a little embarrassed and a little sad about it. And I was like, yeah, that violet eyeshadow also didn't turn out the way I thought it would. Not that I was disappointed in the product itself, but it just didn't turn out the way I thought it would. And then I realized that I have the exact same color palette in my makeup right now. I have somehow gravitated back to the first eyeshadow palette I ever bought.
Righting the wrongs of the past right now. That's what's happening.
That's right. Or I knew my taste then, and only now am I able to sort of be in my integrity with my own taste in eyeshadow colors.
Right.
Because somehow now it's okay.
Teresa, I really relate to all of that because I think there's something special about, and by special I mean fucked up, about when you're a kid and you're made promises by products that don't deliver.
Yeah.
It sort of contributes in a weird way to the end of your innocence.
Yes. Yeah, learning how to cope with disappointment is a huge step in growth.
So I guess we have capitalism to thank for that.
Sure. Okay, great.
So now I'd like to talk about a product that made me a more cynical person when I was a child.
Okay.
For this next section, I'd like to bring in a special guest, my partner, Tim Rarick. Tim, welcome to It Chooses You.
Thanks.
Hey, Tim, welcome back.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Tim, we've brought you in to discuss an event that I know was important to you and was important to me. We are talking about the 1989 release of the Power Glove for Nintendo.
Yes.
Oh.
The greatest of letdowns.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, the Power Glove was a video game controller for Nintendo, but it was a glove. It looks like a futuristic gauntlet that comes midway up the forearm, but with a remote control panel on its side. There's a glove-like guide for your hand, but there are no fingertips. The Power Glove still connected to the Nintendo system with a cord, but it was a long one. And you had to set up this L-shaped sensor mechanism that sat on your television. And one thing I learned in researching this is that the Power Glove was only right-handed.
Bastards.
Part of the build-up and expectation for the Power Glove, at least for me, was its marketing. It was super, super slick.
Can we call it the Infinity Gauntlet, please?
Yeah. Yes.
Can we just, yeah. So the Infinity Gauntlet from 1989, yeah.
Their marketing tagline was, "Everything else is child's play." And I rewatched an ad from the late 80s for the Power Glove. And there's this man who walks through these like blast doors, you know, wearing post-apocalyptic denim. He's also wearing the Power Glove, of course. And he like walks up to this large television screen that takes up the whole wall and like clenches his fist while holding an intense eye contact with the glove. And then he starts playing games. At the end of the video, he turns back to the camera with this like satisfied look on his face. And his hair and skin are glistening with sweat because he worked and played hard.
So let's unpack this a little
Yeah.
bit. So everything else is child's play appeals to the fact that all children want to be older, right?
Mhm.
So if you have this, you're more grown up. Was the guy in the commercial trailing a long cord while he was doing it, or did it appear to be cordless?
Oh, it appeared to be cordless. It was full on bullshit. Yeah. What sold the Power Glove to me, the sort of marketing coup de grace, was the 1989 film starring Fred Savage and Christian Slater, The Wizard. Do you remember this movie, T?
I'm sorry, I do not. It's a pop culture failing of mine.
This is clearly why you did not own a Power Glove, was because you failed to see this commercial for the Power Glove. In the movie, basically, Fred Savage has a little brother who is probably, we would say now, on the spectrum somewhere, but he's a video game genius. Fred Savage, who's probably like 8 or 9 in the film, and his, 7-year-old brother make, of course, a cross-country trek to California to enlist in like the video game championships, right? Somewhere partway there, it's probably, I would say Nevada, it looks like, right?
Something like that.
They meet this kid named Lucas, who's like the cool, he's like the Goliath, right? He's the one to beat.
He's the James Spader of this film.
Exactly. And in this scene, to impress these, the ragtag kids, Lucas doesn't even do it. It's his henchmen open this Samsonite case straight up from a James Bond movie. It should contain like unmarked bills or some kind of high-tech weaponry.
Kruger ends.
Yeah, exactly. But instead, they pull out the Power Glove from this case. And then he puts it on and proceeds to seamlessly, using his fist, control and totally kill a video game. And then he puts the Power Glove away and he says, "I love the Power Glove. It's so bad." And this was the introduction of this ultimately shitty product to the world.
So it was a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was how long was this?
No, it was like a full 90-minute, 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
It was a feature.
Yeah.
That was a commercial. Okay.
I don't know how that film entered my 8-year-old pop culture world.
Mm.
Like, I know that my mom would have never taken me to a movie theater to see this thing.
Yeah.
So somehow it got onto like network television or Nickelodeon or some such, and I really don't know how it entered my consciousness.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like what the movies we saw in the theater as kids or the movies our parents could stand to sit through.
Right.
So I think I might have seen Out of Africa in the theater, but I don't recall seeing an Indiana Jones movie. Yeah.
Well, I dare any 8 to 11-year-old to watch this scene and come away not absolutely needing a Power Glove.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there it is. It's a push button. There's one object that will change your life irrevocably forever.
Yep, there's a theme here, right?
Yeah.
The Power Glove came out and it was, for me personally, a huge disappointment. I believe I got it for Christmas. You put it on and it just really didn't do anything.
So what was it supposed to do? It was supposed to be a video game controller.
I'll explain my understanding of how it should have worked.
Okay.
So, take a video game like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, where
Sure.
you are in the ring fighting a slew of increasingly difficult boxers in the ring. You should be able, with the Power Glove, rather than pushing A or B to dodge or strike, use the glove to be able to dodge out of the way and then using a punching motion actually jab and uppercut and such the boxers you're fighting.
It was basically a Wii controller that you wore on your arm.
Yeah, 20 years before the Wii worked.
So you're using the glove to maneuver in space, but you're also using finger movements to perform certain actions like jump or, you know, you could shoot fireballs on Super Mario Brothers, that sort of thing. It worked for me 10% of the time, which was just enough to make me think it was my fault.
Yeah, it's like a gaslighting toy. It's like, well, if you were better at this, this would work.
Exactly.
I get enough of this from patriarchy, man. I don't need it from my toys.
That's right. How about for you, Tim? Did it work at all?
No. I mean, and to the point where kind of hearing you research this technology now, I'm not fully convinced that I even set it up right.
Yeah. Teresa, this thing had 2 manuals with a series of complicated hand gestures you needed to make in order to do various functions on the video game system.
So it was, in some ways, though it sounds like not intentionally, a crossover with these incredibly complicated tabletop games that people we know and care about are into, where you literally spend 3 months reading the manual before you even try and set up the game.
Absolutely. The thing I remember is that on the forearm of the gauntlet that you would put on, there were several buttons and basically a Nintendo controller on the forearm. So you had your directional pad on the left and your A, B buttons to the right of that, but you couldn't obviously hold that controller like a controller. So you're basically trying to perform directional things and A-B maneuvers with your non-dominant hand because I'm right-handed.
Yeah, they've basically given you a boxing glove and then handed you back the controller you were using before and said good luck.
Right. And that was always like my default in trying to use it playing video games is, well, I'll just use the directional pad and the A-B, but trying to perform all of those things that usually takes 2 hands with my non-dominant hand, it was just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it was like trying to learn how to play a synthesizer and a video game at the same time.
This feels to me like something that the CIA was definitely involved in developing, right? They were trying to train a child army of some kind. They had some new technology they needed the young people to learn. And this is how, like, the people who could figure it out were the ones chosen for that program. So actually, you're both really lucky that you never got a lot out of it.
Well, it was actually the earliest virtual reality technology. It was housed in this glove, and at the time it was obviously cutting edge. It was a $900 piece of equipment that was pitched to Mattel in October of '88. Now, this was released in the Christmas season of 89. So basically, the engineers had 5 months to get it to market. So they had to take a $900 piece of equipment and figure out how to turn it into a $23 piece of equipment that was then sold for $80. You just have the people on the back end fucking killing themselves trying to meet some unrealistic deadline. Now I understand a little bit the context and the why of it, but it was still a really disappointing experience that taught me that sometimes promises are broken.
There's also something, I just rewatched The Martian, and the ton of people working way too hard on the back end to accomplish something on a crazy deadline because management says so. It has a different feel when you're saving someone's life than when you're just making a profit for a toy company. Like the activity is the same, the feelings of stress are the same, etc., but you're getting something really beautiful out of one of them and you're getting nothing out of the other.
I remember having one really good session of attempting with the Power Glove on Christmas Day.
I remember having it come to Jesus where I sat down with it and I thought, I'm going to figure this out. Today's the day. I'm really going to do it. Yeah, okay.
And I remember my parents looking at me and going, honey, this doesn't work. And so we took it back to the store.
See, I was much more obstinate. And I was convinced this was the future and I needed to be a part of it as an 8-year-old.
Tim's like, I want to be a part of that CIA project. I want to make the team.
Sign me up.
I needed it to work as an 8-year-old.
I can hear the pain in your voice even now.
Eventually, the curtain fell on it, and I knew that I wasn't part of the future.
I knew there was no God.
There was no future.
That the universe was indifferent.
Right. It really was a loss of innocence for me, and I got a sense of what capitalism can do at an early age, and it probably disaffected me to a really maybe overly huge way.
The CIA's real mission.
After I'd totally given up the Ghost as using that as a controller for video games, it just became a part of like cosplay for me.
Yeah, it's a prop then.
Yeah, and so being a futuristic cyborg, but to the point where I'd wrap that extra long cord up the rest of my arm. Mm-hmm. But I think the really bad thing I did as a kid was deciding one day to take a pair of scissors and just cut the cord off.
You symbolically cut your umbilical cord, Tim.
His umbilical cord that connected him to capitalism.
I like this story. So wait, what happened immediately preceding that decision?
It was just being just angry that it didn't work.
The pain was so great, you had to hurt something.
It was me deciding, well, this is just a prop now, so this extra 6-foot cord is just making it more difficult for me to play the imaginary games that I was enjoying. So,
Tim, I have to tell you something.
What?
All it ever was a prop.
That and an abject lesson in disappointment.
Oh.
No. I love the idea that you understood. You understood that it didn't work. And you're like, well, this is okay. I'm just going to use it for this other purpose. I can repurpose this and make it a useful, fun part of my life. I'm adaptable. And then at a certain point, you're like, you know what? I'm going to turn these feelings into action. And this part of it now needs to go.
Yeah.
Did you cut it right at the glove?
Yeah, absolutely. It was right at the base of the gauntlet.
No possibility for repair.
Oh, no.
Well, and this is an interesting point because actually now moving forward, a lot of previous Power Glove fans and disappointees have actually turned it into some cool tech. It's being used, one of the animators at Robot Chicken is using it for his stop motion animation. And there's another man that uses it to create music. As often happens in these disappointing fan situations, the fans sort of take it back and turn it into something awesome. There's this new tiny revolution happening with the shitty product that was disappointing in the first place.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it's hopeful, right? Hopeful for humanity. Mm-hmm. Here's this horrible thing that was really, really disappointing. Okay, so have your bad feelings. And now, actually, what kind of fun can we have with it?
Right.
Let's figure out how to make it fun.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being here and talking to us about the disappointing Power Glove.
And let cynicism reign.
I can hear the heartbreak in your voice, and it makes me very happy. Because I know you no longer experience it, you know.
Well, it was my pleasure. I'm glad I could be here.
We're now going to turn to the second source I've identified this week of pop culture fiasco, which is the hoax. Hoaxes are distinguished from disappointments or failures or disasters in the sense that the central promise that's made is based around a lie.
Right, it's insincere. The disasters are sincere.
Right. I was thinking a lot this week about Millie Vanilli.
Yeah, as you do.
Yeah, Millie Vanilli, the premise is, this is the band.
Turns out that's a lie.
Yeah. The lie is, no, it's not. Do you remember the marketing around the Blair Witch Project?
I do.
And so the whole marketing was, this really happened.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't.
I lived in Baltimore for a little bit shortly after that movie came out, and there's all of this speculation that the Blair Witch was actually the Blair Witch, which is north of Baltimore, and it's in the woods and all this stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was, in terms of marketing, it's brilliant, but it's a
Yeah.
lie. There's nothing new about hoaxes. In 1917, two girls in the village of Cottingley, England, Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths, who are cousins, claimed to have photographic evidence of fairies. They even pulled the wool over Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's eyes. He was a spiritualist, and he used the photos in an article he had been writing about fairies. In the early 1980s, the two women admitted that the whole thing had been a hoax, and they were attaching hat pins to the back of fairy pictures from a children's book and taking photographs. Frances said that the fifth photograph, the final one that was released, was real. Both maintained that they had truly seen fairies, even if the photographs weren't real.
I mean, as someone who, I'll put out milk, I'll, apologize to a hawthorn tree if I bump it. I'm not, what is it? I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. Is that the joke from The Office?
Yes.
I mean, I'll do that, but I'm not going to try and convince other people that fairies are real by showing them fake pictures.
Right.
You have to draw the line somewhere, and my integrity demands that I not cross that one.
So now we're going to talk about the shed at Dulwich. So Teresa, I'd like you to go to a website for me. It is The Shed at Dulwich, which is DULWICH.com. The Shed at Dulwich is a restaurant.
The website looks like the Sheedat. The Sheedat. This is amazing. What's a Sheedat? I like it.
So will you just scroll the main page and just tell me what you're seeing?
Appointment only restaurant, South London, Battersea. Doesn't say that, but I only know one South London neighborhood, and that's it. You can find it on Facebook or TripAdvisor, so it's just two very tiny paragraphs. All I'm allowed to know about it is this. I'm going to hit the welcome button over here, and it's just this page. Menu. We don't have a traditional menu. Instead of meals, our menu is comprised of moods. I see. Examples of moods we've served in the past. So they're hitting the pretentious notes perfectly in this. This is really lovely. It's also a great combination of some kind of Helvetica-based sans serif font, which is very modern, and then an italicized Times New Roman something. So
the moods on here are lust, empathetic, contemplation, love, comfort, happy.
I'm going to disagree with their choice of lust and then saying empathetic instead of empathy.
I agree. So I'm going to read comfort. Here's the menu. Yorkshire blue macaroni and cheese seasoned with bacon shavings and served in a 600 thread count Egyptian cotton bowl. Comes with a side of sourdough bread.
What? Okay.
We're looking at typical pretentious fare here, right? Go back to the main page, will you?
Welcome page. Okay, now I'm here.
So top photo there. We've got a round disc with some kind of liquid and red and parsley and then a little something. So this is pan-fried shallots with a side of seafoam and parsley. I'm just reading you what it's supposed to be.
I see. You're telling me what they say it is.
Pan-fried shallots with a side of seafoam and parsley. Here's what it actually is, Teresa. The disc is a bleach tablet with honey, some kind of coloring, and shaving cream. Scroll down to the bottom of the page. Okay, so we've got sort of a molten chocolate-looking cake with some whipped cream-looking stuff. That is actually a sponge covered in paint and shaving cream. Mm-hmm. On the left there's kind of an egg and some parsley. You can't quite see the whole photograph, but the egg is draped over a ham hock, and the ham hock is a person's foot.
Looking more closely at this chocolate cake, yeah, it's like flower arranger's foam.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's that stuff you can poke things in. Interesting.
In 2017, Uba Butler, a freelance writer, decided to try and make the shed where he lived into the #1 restaurant on TripAdvisor for London.
I am fully behind this. Because the only people who would review it or they're all lying that they've been there. I love this.
Uba's first writing job was creating fake reviews for real restaurants on TripAdvisor. The restaurants themselves would pay him £10 to write a review of a restaurant that he had never been to. In TripAdvisor, he saw a fake reality that could be manipulated. And for a while, he told himself that the only part of the website that couldn't be faked were the actual restaurant. Then he thought to himself, wait a minute, is that true? Uba at the time lived in a shed in the backyard of a larger house. His rent was £800 a month, which is exorbitant.
It's like Boulder rent prices.
For TripAdvisor verification, you only need a phone. So he got a burner phone and made that the phone number of the restaurant, and then made this website you just looked at with sort of slick marketing and typical pretentious language. Then Uba got his friends to write fake reviews. But the thing is, he knew that he had to establish some ground rules about what the restaurant was, because otherwise someone might say it was vegan, and then someone else say they really enjoyed the meatloaf or whatever. Right. So his ground rules to his friends for what the restaurant was, to ensure consistency, here's what they were. Number 1, you eat outside. Al fresco dining. Number 2, it's weird as fuck. Number 3, it's homely. And number 4, appointment only. And this was key.
Sure.
Because he didn't want people showing up.
Can't have walk-ups. Yeah. To his house and see that it's clearly not a restaurant and that's a bleach tablet. Yeah.
This whole charade just sounded like a restaurant people would sincerely freak out about, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly. It's so hard to, it's Tom Haverford's restaurant, right? By appointment only, open twice a year for an hour.
Right. When he started out on TripAdvisor, he was number 18,190. Bottom of the list of all the restaurants in London. 1 month in, he was number 10,000. People started calling the burner phone for reservations, and he just told everyone he was fully booked. 3 months in, the shed at Dulwich was number 1,456 in London. 5 months in, he was number 121. Then he was number 91. At this point, he's getting emails and phone calls from people like actors, TV execs, bloggers, all vying for tables at his non-existent restaurant. Uba made a video documenting this, and it's fascinating. It's on Vice.com. In the video, he starts asking people who want reservations questions like, how many Instagram followers do you have? In this video, this woman calls for a reservation. He asks her how many Instagram followers she has. She says, I'm not on Instagram. So he leaves the line open and pretends to take another call from another person that wants a reservation for the same night. He asks that person, that fake person, how many followers they have. And he says, okay, you have the reservation. And then he gets back on the phone with the first woman. He says, we're fully booked. And she says, I heard you just take another reservation for the same night. And he said, oh yeah, that's someone we know. And hangs up.
Oh God.
He quickly became number 54, number 42. At this point, he tells one woman who wants a reservation on the phone there will be a porn shoot happening in the restaurant on the night she wants a reservation. He asks her if she's okay with that, and she says, yeah, that's fine, no problem.
Oh my God. I don't even know what this is a commentary on at this point.
The interesting thing, you really have to see his reactions, because he's not comfortable doing it.
So he's not mean-spirited.
Oh, no. He gets off the phone and he goes, huh? Like, he hates what he's pretending to be.
I see. Okay.
So then he's number 10. At that point, people started applying for jobs at his fake restaurant.
Yep.
Packages start arriving at his house sent by companies who have somehow used Google Maps to find his location and send free samples of their products. The local government emails him offering the restaurant a spot in a new retail area that they're developing. An Australian airline says they want to feature the restaurant in their in-flight videos. And a PR agency reaches out hungry to promote the restaurant. 7 months in, The Shed is number 1 on TripAdvisor for London.
No one. Never served a meal.
Never served a meal. At this point, he says his phone would literally ring straight for 5 hours.
Oh my God.
He realized the only option was to open the restaurant.
That's not where I went at all. He realized the only option was to shut this shit down.
So 7 months in, he starts to take reservations. This is for one night only.
Yeah.
He turned his yard into the outdoor restaurant. So he got electric heaters, he got tables, he even put a table on the roof of his shed. He has a friend who's a chef, and he asked his chef to come and make the food. But they went to the store and got microwave meals and dressed it up with cool microgreens and things like that.
Sure.
Per entree, they spent £1. At this point, he was like, we cannot charge for this, right?
Yeah.
He told all the customers that it was a press night and that everything would be on the house. So
Okay.
he put up a fire pit. There's a children's playhouse in his backyard. He filled it with live chickens so customers could choose their own chicken as though they were picking a lobster.
Oh my God.
They didn't do it. We're not serving chicken. It was just a gimmicky thing, right?
Okay.
He got a friend to be a DJ at the restaurant, spinning records of restaurant ambiance, sound effects, and a microwave dinging.
I mean, it's the best piece of theater I've heard about in some time.
Yeah. He blindfolded customers, meeting them nearby and leading them through the backyard. And he did this because the backyard was a mess and he didn't want them to see it.
Yeah. He could only set dress the one little area, right?
He had no money. I mean,
yeah.
But he blindfolded them because he thought people are into that kind of thing.
Uh-huh. Talk about somebody with his finger on the pulse of a particular personality type. Wow.
The entire evening, he's wearing a green beret. For dinner, they serve cup of soup, got mismatched tablecloths all over the tables. Some of them are actually those cheap plastic ones that one-use tablecloths that you buy for birthday parties.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Shitty chairs. As I said, he put a table up on the roof. That's where actually a pair of his friends sat.
Mm.
But he leaves the cheap aluminum ladder up, leaning against the shed. He takes frozen veggie lasagna out of the oven, putting edible flowers all over it. It's like this sploogey mess on the plate, but it has that artfully messy look to it, right?
Mm.
People loved it. The restaurant was populated with a lot of his friends and professional actors, but there were actual customers at the restaurant as well. He explains that one set of customers were in Paris the night before, but now they're eating at his shed. The thing that's kind of cool about the video is he's actually really kind and sweet with his customers. He's very careful to take good care of them, which is sort of dissonant with the whole experiment. After he leads his last set of blindfolded customers out of the yard, he comes back over to the camera laughing because the 4 customers he just led out tried to book another reservation.
Oh my God.
He said he was leading them out and sort of apologizing. And they said, so is it easier to get a reservation now that we've been in once? And he was like, what?
Oh my God. Wow.
Now, TripAdvisor, of course, says that most of the reviews on their website are real.
Sure.
And even though some people do try and manipulate reviews, it's a separate issue from the restaurant itself being completely fake. This experiment doesn't really reflect on the efficacy of the website, since fake businesses would be the exception and not the rule.
Disagree. Fake business is a larger problem in the same family as fake reviews.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing for me, and you may not know this about me, Teresa, but hidden camera and prank shows make me incredibly uncomfortable and nervous.
Yeah, I can't watch them either. Yeah.
I hate them. But watching this did not make me feel that way.
Huh.
And I thought about why.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is because it was making a point. Part of it is because obviously he didn't hurt anyone. All he did was generate a desire for something that was impossible to fulfill.
By the time you watched this video, did you have a sense of him as a person, or did you gain your sense of him from this thing you watched? My empathy with the hidden camera shows is I don't want to watch someone be hurt or be made fun of.
Yeah.
Or, I don't want to watch people be mean to people. It's why I don't like reality television.
Agreed.
If it's mean-spirited, I am not interested. But if it's something else, it becomes interesting to me. Because then it's some kind of other human interaction that sort of makes visible this layer of, impersonal communication or word of mouth and where you're getting your information from and who's giving you that information. And it brings all those questions in. Having those questions be a part of your experience is okay for me if I trust that the experience is not being used to harm me in some way, right? Mm-hmm. I'm okay working with those questions if my money or my safety or my self-esteem is not at risk. So it's interesting when it's safe in that way. And then when it's not, it's just mean and you guys can fuck off, right?
Yeah. I got a sense of who he was through the video. And the video is my main source. He also wrote an article about it. And many people wrote about it when it happened. And he got called out a lot,
Yeah.
It made me realize that there's a fine line between pretension and a joke.
Can you say more?
That language on the website.
Yeah.
It sounds realistically pretentious, but it's a joke.
Is there something about taking the most obvious, cultural, this is so the way I'm going to talk about pretension is pretentious. Buckle up, everybody. Is there a way of looking at it like the most obvious cultural signifier of a particular social class is this particular language and the style of the photo and how they describe experience in this way?
I think that's part of it, but also I think it's because funny jokes have to be true, And so he's finding the truth, pushing it. I mean, once you know it's a joke, you're like, okay, right. He pushes it a little bit, but it's so close to reality. It's so close to the reality of this particular food culture.
Well, and isn't it interesting that he has so much empathy that he actually denied himself the punchline, right? Because the punchline is this restaurant doesn't exist. But he made it exist for whatever reason. That's interesting.
It is. And as I watched the video, there was this sincerity that actually emerged from it as he's preparing his backyard. Because you're watching him the whole time he's making something out of nothing.
Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of right that it did actually become something for just a moment, But as he's preparing and he talks about how he doesn't have any money and he, it's definitely slapdash. But when you see the video and you see people enjoying themselves in this fire pit and these this crazy dude with these walking around with these chickens and it's actually charming,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's a little bit like when we talked about disaster theater where he did end up providing an experience. It just wasn't the experience that people expected. So those 20 people he served or whatever it was actually did eat at the most exclusive restaurant in London because it only ever served 20 people.
That's right.
But they're just part of an experience that wasn't the one they expected.
Or maybe they got what they expected in some way. If one couple wanted another reservation, then that experience met their expectations. But what was really happening was somehow beyond this is a tough one. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
Your experience is your experience, even if it ultimately ends up being a part of something else that means something different than what you thought you were taking part in.
Yeah.
This is very vague, but...
Or it's your experience changing over time based on revelation.
Yeah.
Because they left thinking... It seemed like everyone was happy. They said they enjoyed it. So, assuming they're telling the truth, they left happy having eaten at the most exclusive restaurant in London.
That's right. Yeah.
It's just that 2 weeks later, or whenever, they found out that it was still exclusive, but it was also not real. It was only exclusive for one night. But they made it in. So it's still exclusive.
Yeah. That's a really interesting story, Claire. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to. I'm following up on that. I find that just absolutely fascinating.
It's very Banksy.
There's a story from the heyday of the Industrial Revolution in England. There's a bet, right? These incredibly wealthy people would bet thousands and thousands of pounds about which raindrop was going to roll down a window fastest, right? Because they just had money to burn, thanks colonialism. And somebody bet somebody else at one of these clubs that he could make any address the most famous house in London. And somebody's like, what do you mean? And he's like, just pick an address and I'll make it them. And they're like, how are you going to do that? He's like, I'm not going to tell you, but I'll do it. And so somebody handed him an address and he just placed orders for all kinds of supplies to be delivered to that house. 400 dozen roses, 2 dozen donkeys, more bricks than could fit in the whole street, all to be delivered to this house. And the people at the house were like, what is happening? What is happening? And it was the most famous house in London. Something very British about a hoax on that scale.
Yeah. But it's eye-opening, that's for sure.
Yeah. So now I want to know why you're interested in hoaxes. Like, what is it about that topic that's getting you going and making you go through this list? Do you feel like you're perpetrating one somehow?
No.
Oh, okay. That's too bad. I wasn't saying that in a mean way. I just got excited. I was like, are you doing a hoax right now?
I like the boldness of a hoax. I like someone that's like, I'm going to use this system. I'm going to break that rule, you know? I like the gumption behind it. I admire it. I've pulled pranks, but I would never pull a hoax on people that I love. You know, I love fulfilling my promises. That's really important to me in my life. So I think there's a little bit of fantasy in hoax for me. And something like The Shed, where as far as hoaxes go, it's pretty mild. No one was hurt. Like I said, it just basically generated a desire for a thing that didn't exist. Also, with my history of producing shows and trying to get people to come to shows.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this, Teresa. We have had this idea at one point to pretend to do a show that was sold out every night.
Yeah.
Or to do a show and just pretend it was sold out all the time and really exclusive. And then base the marketing on that. I do have this fantasy of finding success without any of the work. You know? Because I too recognize that a lot of the systems we have in place are either exploitable or just entirely bullshit.
Yeah. So the wanting success without any work, sure, I totally get that. Everyone has the rich list, right? When I'm rich, this is what I'll do if I was just suddenly given all the resources I ever wanted, right? But there's also something really interesting because this fake restaurant ended up being, it sounds like a significant administrative task for this guy. Like, he made a bunch of work for himself.
Yeah.
With this, because he's like, if my phone is ringing, this burner phone I bought is ringing off the hook 5 hours a day.
Yeah. He left it at a friend's house overnight and got back to it, and there were 116 missed calls.
Oh my God. That's just daunting. So then he's doing work, but he's having no reward from it. It's only labor.
Right. Except making a point, Teresa. Making a point is sometimes worth it.
That's true. Making a point is sometimes worth that much labor. Yeah. Well, there's also, you mentioned writing and touring shows, and I only did the one. Yeah, but there is that thing like I think this is a good time, but I don't know how to convince people that it will be a good time. I'm pretty sure it's a good time, but I just don't know how to entice people.
My friend Martin says it's throwing a party and hoping people will come.
Yeah.
And so I like that there was no party with the Shed at Dulwich story.
Yeah.
It's a fuck you. It's a fuck you to the people who didn't come when you were trying.
I see. Ooh, it's gotten dark. I like it. We're into some good stuff now. I was just going to talk about, how hard it is to like have a thing and then be like, I really like this. Do you like it? No? Oh, okay, cool. Try something else then.
Yeah.
You have to be dedicated to being hopeful. You have to like really put a lot of energy into remaining open to new experience, etc., being hopeful, and like honestly trying to share something new with the world, right? Which is great. It's a really great practice. But it's challenging sometimes, for sure. I remember as a child throwing a party that no one came to. So that's a pretty tough moment.
Well, and the other kind of cool thing about what Uba did is that there was this built-in failure ejector seat. If it didn't become a thing, it was never a thing in the first place anyway.
Yes.
So he protected himself,
That's true. Yeah. He wasn't trying to do something. He was trying to not do something, but successfully. That's really interesting. So, I love that he didn't charge them for the food, because at that point, if he did, it would be mean-spirited, right?
Yeah.
Making fun of, like, you're into this pretentious thing and I'm making you pay for something has no actual value or much less value than you think. So that he didn't charge them, I find that kind. I also like that he didn't like the lying part. So it's somehow different if the person who does it isn't a psychopath.
Yeah, I highly recommend everyone watch the video. So it's on Vice.com and it's called I Made My Shed the #1 restaurant in London. There's also an accompanying article on Vice.com by Uba Butler, the man who did this. I'm glad he made a video because seeing him do it expresses the spirit in which he did it. There's a little glimmer in his eye. He's also having fun with it. He says that, there's one way of looking at it, which is, oh, don't trust anything. But he said the other way of looking at it is, wow, I did this with nothing. I became successful, on a certain level. Obviously, we're not talking about actual finances, but I did this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm nobody, and I did this. I just wanted to mention my sources for the other stories real quick. Wikipedia, of course. For the Power Glove, there's a YouTube video called The Story of the Power Glove. It's on YouTube's Gaming Historian channel by Norman Caruso.
Oh, I love that there's a gaming historian. Of course there is. That's great.
Yeah. So everybody check all that out. I really recommend Uba's video. And actually, he does a lot of pranks and things like that. He's got quite a few. Which when I hear prankster, I think, oh, jerk. And I haven't looked into his other work, but he's a really interesting man. Yeah.
It's fascinating. Thank you, Claire.
You are welcome. We should say a special thanks this week to our guest, Tim Rearick.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, please email us at itchoosesyoupodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, please do that. We look forward to hearing from you, and we will talk to you again very soon. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Testing. Great. Thank you for listening to It Chooses You. Your hosts are Teresa Sparks and Claire Patton. Our theme song is by Bobby Dart. If you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us an email at itchoosesyouPodcast@gmail.com.